Welcome to What's in a Game. On today's show, former Nuggets general manager Calvin Booth emerges from obscurity to give an in-depth interview, not on this show, on what really went down last year. Just realized how that sounded. He will not be here, guys. On what went down last year, leading up to the dual firings of the general manager and head coach Michael Malone. We'll also break down the latest film on the Denver Nuggets. Which version of this team are we getting night to night, and which version is necessary to make a deep run in the playoffs? Stay tuned to find out. Welcome back to What's in a Game. I'm Grace Jean here with my co-host Will Jones. How are you doing today, Will, on this fine Thursday, February 26th? I can't believe the month is over. Like, it really zoomed by.
Yeah, we were gone for the All-Star break. Yeah. Now we're back, so good to be back with everyone. Thanks for letting us take that little break. And we're potting after a win again, so I'm always great, especially against the Celtics, who were being really overhyped, I think. But whatever. They're the Celtics.
I mean, they're fine. Like, they're good. It's the East. But, I mean, the Celtics have been good. We'll talk about it, but I think they're really punching well above their weight class. Like, they're overperforming quite a bit, in my opinion, this season. I don't know how that's going to translate when they get to the playoffs. Because at this point, I think it's pretty clear that they're going to make it, which is funny because a lot of people thought they would not, including me. Or I thought they'd be like in that play-in range, but now they're probably going to have home court in the playoffs, despite missing Tatum for the entire year. Or most of the year. We'll see if he comes back. This is going to be a very news-heavy show. We will definitely be breaking down film in the latter half. But Calvin Booth decided to grace the Denver Nuggets media outlets, the various ones, with a pile of content yesterday with that interview on Kevin O'Connor's show over at Yahoo Sports. Before we jump into things, I wanted to throw out my Olympic congratulations, because that was really my life this month, was watching figure skating at the Olympics and hockey at the Olympics. And thank you for the All-Star break to help kind of ease the burden of that and basketball at the same time. First, congratulations to Bay Area girly Alysa Liu for bringing Team USA their first gold in women's figure skating in 24 years, and their first medal in 20 years, Olympic medal, that is, in women's skating. And I just wanted to shout her out because, like, she could be legitimately transformative for the sport, because one, skating in terms of its popularity, not just in this country, but globally, but especially in this country, which is like one of the, everyone loves the American market in terms of like consumers. It always does great when there's a female American champion. Like, we've had men on the podium like every Olympics, I think, except 2014, since before I was even a figure skating fan. Doesn't matter. But when we have a woman on the podium, it completely blows up. She has skyrocketed in popularity, like going from, I think, 300,000 Instagram followers right after she was named to the Olympic team in January to over 6 million now, which is like completely unheard of. She's the most followed figure skater in the world. And we don't know what to do with it. We over in figure skating fandom are like, oh my God, there's all these people in our house now. We've been on this.
I've been enjoying mixing her like clips with reacting to Nuggets, like when they came back and Jokic hitting threes, and I using the Alysa Liu.
What about the missing? What about the missing threes? Oh, that one's good. That's a good one. Because I was wondering, because I was watching it on Peacock, like did NBC have that on enough of a delay that they could bleep that out, or are they getting an FCC fine?
No, it was definitely on a delay, I think. I never actually heard the F word in a clip. It was always cut out.
Oh, okay. So on Peacock, like it was, well, live anyway, it was still there.
Okay. Nice.
I thought you were referring to her 60 Minutes interview from last month, where she has that quote about, I love to struggle. Actually, it makes me feel alive. When referring to Jokic taking 13 threes yesterday.
Hey, keep shooting. It's a lesson to the young fellas out there.
Anyway, her story is incredible. She like hated the sport because her like dad forced her into her. She had like terrible, like overbearing coaches and stuff as a kid, like coming up, and ended up retiring after the 2022 Olympics. Came back last season, became world champion. And we were like, wow, definitely did not see that when all this, when she decided that she was going to come back, because she was a really good skater before, but it wasn't like, oh yeah, world champion potential. Then this season just continued that ascent, and then surprised. I mean, everybody, like nobody had her as like the favorite for gold. We thought that she could maybe medal, like get on the podium, and I was thinking like bronze potential. But yeah, she just freaking killed it.
Is she Jokic like in a way where she has a more chill approach? I mean, they both work hard, but they both work how they want and are getting the breaks that they need. And she even said, I'm going to hold myself accountable. If I'm not doing enough, I'll do more. If I'm doing too much, I'll cut back. And I don't know if Jokic is exactly like that. Never heard him say that specifically, but like he gives off that vibe that, you know, everyone's always talking about how much he's working.
I honestly,
but when he takes a break, he does take a break.
I honestly feel like Jokic is more dedicated to basketball than Alysa is to skating. Yeah, I think she's probably a more well-rounded person. And part of that is because we don't have 82 competitions a season. Yeah, she has like 7, right? And she trains in between. Obviously, like they get to practice more, skaters do, during the season than NBA teams do. But yeah, like I could definitely see that. And then it's like everyone's like, damn, she's so casual. We had all these quotes coming out of the Russian press that like they follow skating hardcore regardless, despite the fact that they're largely banned from international competition and all of this stuff. Like it's like a I mean, it's not like football here. That's probably hockey. But like they pack arenas over in Russia, even for like domestic competitions that have like no bearing on international results or anything. It's actually kind of impressive, and I'm jealous of that. Like I would love for it to be like that here in the US again. Hasn't really been like that since like the Sasha Cohen era and like Michelle Kwan before that. All these quotes coming out about like she's so nonchalant. Maybe our skaters could learn from that. And I'm like, maybe if you guys didn't run them into the ground.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, that would be easier. So anyway, congratulations to Alysa Liu. Go watch her, go follow her. She's awesome. And I was there first. Not literally me, but like figure skating.
I can confirm.
Also congratulations to the Team USA women's hockey team for beating Canada in the final in the gold medal game. I forget, that game went to OT, right? Yeah. I was up pretty early for both games. I didn't actually get to watch the men because it was like way too early here in the Pacific time zone. I was like, I'll just see what happens. And I'm checking the group chats and everyone's like, we beat Canada. And I'm like, yes. But yeah, congrats to the women for being awesome. And
not the men.
I mean, congratulations to the Team USA men for not letting Canada win gold. That's literally, that was my whole thing, even leading up to the game before any of the aftermath stuff was like, I don't even care who wins gold in the men's side. I just don't want it to be Canada. And I have non-Canada hate reasons for that, although that's a big part of it. Half of the Team Canada roster, like nearly half, are Florida Panthers. So I wanted them to come back from the Olympics hungry to try to make some kind of push to make the playoffs.
Panther fan?
Yeah. Of course. I'm a bandwagon Florida Panther fan.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. I don't think people like my hang on a second. Give me 30, not even 30 seconds.
I thought maybe she'd be an Avs fan because, you know, she interacts so much with Nuggets fans all the time on Twitter and has been getting into hockey.
So Avs helped me get into hockey because my entire timeline during Avs games would be hockey.
Avs fan.
But I was like, I feel no attachment to this team. I remember watching them in the playoffs. I think it was last year, like the Stars series. And I was like, that's rough, you know, with the way that those really close games went. but like, I love Bob.
Well, there you go.
Our goalie, my goat, Sergei Bobrovsky. He's Bay. And I wore that to a Panthers Sharks game in San Jose, which is in the Bay Area here. And I swear to God, there were like 3 Panthers fans in the entire arena. Everyone was wearing teal for the Sharks. And I was like, oh God, please don't jump me.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I hope Bennett and Marchand and all those guys come back to the Panthers hungry to try to make a push. That would be awesome. We had some guys on Team Finland as well, which was interesting. I thought there was a former Av. I was watching the I think it was the Finland game. What's the name of the guy that the Avs traded last year, but he ended up on the Stars?
Yeah. Rantanen.
Oh yeah, Mikko Rantanen. Right. Oh, that was a tough one because I really wanted Finland to knock out Canada. Then I wouldn't have had to care about the final. Yeah, but that was fun. Hockey. What hockey is like a really fun sport to watch in person and not, which surprised me because I generally don't love low scoring sports like soccer and whatever. It can be kind of, but with hockey, it's very action packed sport. And I actually was starting to get into it before my heated rivalry obsession
there you go.
emerged over the last month. So yeah, I love fictional men's hockey players, probably a little bit more than the real ones right now.
Me too. Yeah. No question.
I was conflicted over the amount of good press that Canada as a country was getting over the show that I loved so much. So I'm glad that they lost the gold medal game so that I can be less conflicted about loving the show.
Well, if there's Avs fans in here as well as Nuggets fans, hopefully those that lost on Canada come back and are hungry to win the cup now. That's the only silver lining that I'm sure.
Right. You guys got McKinnon. He was pissed off about the stuffy.
McKinnon and Makar. Brock Nelson won on the U.S. and he didn't go to the White House. So I was proud of him for that. I don't know if it was actually a political decision or if he just like needed to get back. But
his wife was probably like, we have did he say he had a 3-year-old or 3-month-old kid at home? There was like a whole statement about like reasons that he didn't go. I think it was Nelson that was this particular statement because there were a number of players that didn't attend the State of the Union thing, but yeah, man, those boys, they really know how to kill momentum, don't they?
Yeah.
It's honestly a miracle that they won. I was definitely sharing all those posts, those like hang the banner, like Canada like dominated most of the game because it was funny, but it's also true. But that's the fun of sports like hockey. It's not always the best team that wins. It's a team that got the goals in the net, and I want to give credit to Connor Hellebuck because I did watch not the condensed highlights, but like the longer form highlights of the game, and I was just like the saves that were going on in that game to make it so that Canada only had 1 goal on 42 shots on goal were like very impressive. And so, credit to him for that as well. All right, let's jump into things. But before that, please do us a favor, hit the like and subscribe buttons. Really helps us out with the algorithm, the almighty YouTube algorithm. All right, first news item. I thought this was really important, kind of broad strokes NBA news, because it could become very relevant in the wake of some of the discussions that the league is having right now in terms of possible expansion, which we're not going to get into because nothing has actually been made final. It's literally just rumors at this point about what will be discussed with the Board of Governors. But the NBA is proposing, as a league, is proposing a bunch of NBA anti-tanking measures. Will, if you could bring up the tweet from Shams here. There's like, let's see, 7 things here. A few of the proposed measures will be first round picks that can only be protected top 4 or top 14. So like none of this in between stuff. It feels targeted at the Jazz that have a top 8 protected pick owed to the Thunder right now, honestly. That particular one. There's another one here. They want to freeze the lottery odds for the draft at the trade deadline or some later date, which I thought was an interesting proposal, but it would probably just drive teams to tank earlier. And I think a lot of people kind of commented the same thing. No longer allowing a team to pick in the top 4 in consecutive years and or after consecutive bottom 3 finishes. So that would deter multi-year tanking efforts because it's just not as beneficial. There's the next one about teams not being able to pick in the top 4 the year after making conference finals. I don't really understand how that's an tanking measure. How many teams make the conference finals and then is that targeted at the Pacers? That
I don't
lost
know.
Halliburton to an Achilles in Game 7 of the NBA Finals?
Yeah, I feel like there was only one. It's not like this happens very much. So what are they reacting to?
Right. And I guess okay, you don't want a good team that just has a bad year to get better when they're just going to have they're going to get all their guys back healthy. So I kind of get the logic.
Maybe it
would also have prevented the Spurs from getting Tim Duncan. Right?
Yeah. Well, and the Warriors had a chance to do something like that. They drafted James Wiseman. They were still pretty good. They had a really bad year. Everyone was injured, and they got a super high draft pick, selected James Wiseman. But
I guess that happens sometimes with really bad injury years. So the point is we want bad teams to pick early in the lottery. We don't want teams that just had a bad injury year to pick in the lottery. So that's actually one that is beneficial to bad teams. So maybe even though it kind of makes the least sense in terms of how many teams does this actually impact, but in terms of the goal of it kind of makes sense. They want to allocate lottery odds based on 2-year records instead of 1 year, which is I guess. They want to extend the lottery potentially to include all play-in teams, and I don't want that to be the case because of how these protections work that are owed to some good teams and all this stuff. I don't know if they're going to aim for enacting all of these. These are probably just grab bag proposals, and they're going to try to see what makes the most sense together, because some of these don't necessarily make sense together because you don't want to do you want to extend the lottery to all play-in teams, and the last proposal is to flatten odds for all lottery teams? Because I think that's a disaster. I don't think that middle of the pack teams should be treated the same as bottom of the league teams when it comes to draft preference.
Yeah.
Right. That kind of I don't know any league in the world that operates their draft like this, by the way.
Yeah.
I don't know a lot about other drafts, but I've never heard of anything like that. A lot of the leagues that I'm aware of, it's worst team gets the better pick, and that's just how things work, and there's not all of this hullabaloo over the whole thing. And so I find it interesting how in the minutia, even the way that it currently operates now with the NBA with the draft lottery. I'm sure there are other leagues that have lotteries, but it's not that common. So I find it interesting how in the weeds they are with trying to address this issue that is just kind of a product of a sports league where there are 30 teams and only half of them make the playoffs.
Yeah, I saw Keith Smith. I think he kind of did a point by point breakdown of those proposals and how none of them would help with tanking. That was a kind of interesting one. If people should go find him tweeting about it. But yeah, I don't have specific thoughts
Sam
about
Quinn
any of these.
Also at CBS did a good one. So I want to check out Keith Smith after the show.
Or maybe I was thinking about Sam Quinn and it wasn't Keith Smith, but maybe it was Keith. Anyway, check both of them. But tanking, I just don't really care about it that much. I don't think it's that big of a deal. Other than
I heard somebody on a podcast, or it was like one of, or like an ESPN show, I can't remember, the other day, talking about how they should, like, nobody cares about tanking of like teams in the bottom of the league in terms of like fans, because like fans want their teams to tank if they're watching, if their teams are bad, right? Unless maybe you're a Jazz fan, but because they've been doing it for like so long at this point. And maybe like the Jazz kind of egregiously be doing this year after year. But the thing is, they never get top picks. Like they're always like middle of the lottery, back of the lottery. Like I kind of get the incentive over the last few years because of the lottery. If they just had a normal, like, worst team, like just reverse of record kind of order with the draft, Jazz probably aren't tanking for this long over the last like 4 years, you know? But somebody on one of these podcasts was talking about how I don't care about tanking at the bottom of the league. But what we should do is like create an even stronger incentive for the top of the league teams to play hard every single night, which is like not like a widespread issue, but part of like a lot of people talk about like the number of games that they have to play and like sitting guys and all this stuff. And that's the other part of it is like over the last couple of years, they've been cracking down with this like player participation policy and like the 65 game rule for awards and all of that stuff. But someone was saying like instead of just kind of cross matching, first seed plays the 8th seed, second seed plays the 7th seed. You get preference of who you play. That like top 4 in the conference gets preference of who they play from the bottom half of the bracket. And then that creates a greater incentive for like the top, like fighting for like the top 2 or 3 instead of like kind of being okay with like middle of the packing it within that like top 6. I don't think that's as big of an issue. It would just be kind of cool. So that's not really addressing like a problem so much as it's like, oh, I wonder what this would do. So it felt more like, just like a fun little experiment. But yeah, like I agree with you. I don't really, I just don't care about the Utah Jazz.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, Light Chemistry brought up a comment about the gambling, and Adam Silver did mention that he doesn't want the teams sitting guys in the middle of the games and messing up people's bets and whatever the hell. That's like a lame,
the companies are mad
reason.
because they like people are asking for refunds, and some of them guarantee that kind of stuff if a guy gets injured. Not all of them. I don't know about every sports book, but some of them do, because people get pissed off if they're like, well, I didn't know that this guy was going to get injured or like randomly get sat in the middle of the game.
That is an issue, or like that is a part of it. And I don't know I don't know if it's just a simple
stop like, betting on the Utah Jazz.
Well, that too, but just don't bet on sports at all. But don't, if they are sitting guys in the middle of the game and it's obvious, can't they just fine them for that? Like some kind of
they've
fairness thing. Did they do that? Did they find them?
They've been like trying to do that, but it's like hard to catch, right? Because you have to, it's like prove that I didn't sprain my ankle. Like I probably sprained my ankle in the course of this conversation.
Did they actually sit guys in during the Jazz games because they claimed they were injured? I thought they just benched them and were like, no, they're just not playing them.
I think they just benched them.
So they didn't even try to hide it. At least try to hide it.
I don't know. Like,
but again, like, I don't care about tanking. Yeah. Like, I know that they want the quality of the games to be better. There's so many other solutions that would make that better for fans than this, and they're focusing on it. I would rather focus on so many other things to make the league more exciting and better than focusing on tanking. Even though I don't like.
Yes, I agree with that.
And I'm mad that the Thunder did tank for a while and they accumulated all these picks and they drafted really well. I can't fault them for that. And they got really lucky that SGA is as good as he was. I can't necessarily fault him for that. I more blame other things for that. So like following the Thunder blueprint of like tanking and then becoming a juggernaut is still hard to do, but it does make me mad that like it almost is like you don't really want to.
I don't think the Jazz are trying to become a juggernaut. They're just like, can we just get a top 4 pick?
That's
like, can we get
situation.
A top 4 pick? I don't think they've had one in the last 4 drafts. Utah Jazz. Who have they drafted that was like in the top 4? They got Ace Bailey at, was it 7? or 5 because he fell in like a not great draft also. Yeah, it's draft history. Ace Bailey. They haven't picked in the top 5.
Yeah.
In their like team.
Actually I did go back and look at their draft picks because I was like, could this be an anti-Thunder thing? But they only picked in the
Inez
top 5
Cantor
once.
or Inez Freedom, I should say, in 2011 at number 3. They were a really good team for that decade, so like whatever. I was just curious. They haven't had a top 4 pick.
Yeah. They just had. Oh, you're talking about the Thunder.
The Jazz.
Oh, the Jazz. Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, OKC, like they don't even need their own picks. They've got everybody else's too.
Yeah, the Jazz are weird. Sometimes teams transition out of like being in tank mode and decide to win actually, or try to at least. Anyway, I think it's also. I think Adam Silver is like he's just getting worse and worse in my mind by the day with his decisions.
There was this great meme going around that was like people talking about like different issues with the NBA. And the guy, and it's like Adam Silver's response is like, put them in a tournament, put them in a tournament, put them in a tournament.
Yeah, put them in a
tournament. It's like the play-in tournament, the in-season tournament, and now like I've heard that there are going to be proposals for like these are kind of joking, but I've heard this circulating that like the teams in the lottery should, or like the bottom 4 or whatever, should play for like the best, for like the top pick too. And it's like, okay. This is going a little. Oh, also, the USA versus World in the All-Star game, which actually turned out to be pretty fun, but is like another tournament tournament-based solution. And I am all for a tournament. I always tell people when they recommend me particularly animes, like I love tournament or test-based animes. Like I love a tournament bracket. I love matchups. I love seeing like, oh, what happens if like, I love an exam, tuning exams in Naruto. Like I've barely watched any Naruto, but that was like some of the best television that I've watched. And maybe he gets that and he's like, I'm just appealing to the tournament heads out there, but it can't be your solution to every single problem.
No.
Related to this, if you don't have anything else specific to say on these specific anti-tanking measures, I did want to talk about the Pacers situation. They were fined $100,000 as a team for sitting Aaron Nesmith in a game a few weeks ago. I believe he was out with an ankle that he had visibly injured, it seemed, in the game prior. At that point, the Pacers were close to, if not already, 30 games below 500 when this happened. So just like for the context, Rick Carlisle a few days ago went on a local Indiana radio station to expound on that situation. And he was like, I was kind of appalled at like the whole situation. They didn't even interview the team doctor for the Pacers, which was weird. The NBA's investigators had asked the team if they considered medicating Aaron Nesmith so that he could play and whatever. And I think all of this, what he's recounting, happened before the NBA issued their fine. And I think it's just like, man, I do not care if the Pacers are tanking this year. Not only is Hallie injured, like they've been like ravaged by injury. Basically everybody but Pascal has missed significant time with like legitimate injuries. So I don't care about like this little stuff that they add on top of it. I mean, like, we should have been talking about this with the process Sixers. Like they're talking about these teams like they're the process Sixers. And I don't think that the Jazz are like quite there. And also, like, the Sixers kept, like, they were getting picks. Like, the Jazz are not. The Pacers are just like, we're just here because our best player is, like, out. And we can't compete right now. So maybe if you want to augment how bad, like, when you're a bad team, like, you do things to, like, enhance that even more, right? Which is clearly what the Pacers have been doing this season in some instances. But they've also had, some unfortunate injury circumstances. And I'm just kind of like, okay, if we were to create a spectrum of like, what is the level of tanking that should kind of garner like this level of outrage and response. I think process Sixers are like clearly yes, like because this is ridiculous because they were like fielding non-NBA teams and whatever. And even on this show, like I've talked about like what the Jazz were doing last year in terms of like the product that they were putting on the floor was like disgusting. And I only knew that from the games that the Nuggets played them because I don't care about the Jazz otherwise. And I honestly didn't care in those games either because I was like, yeah, Denver, go beat the freaking Utah Jazz. Thank you. Like, right. So like the process Sixers and maybe even last year's Jazz like are like on that end of the spectrum. And then what's like a light tanking example in the last few years that you can think of to be like, I don't really care about this at all. This is like totally okay.
Like something that's egregious or normal tanking?
Normal tanking.
I mean, like any team in the East in the bottom, like I just never care about.
Except the Wizards. Like the Wizards last year were right there with the Jazz too. Like it was nasty what they were, which was why it was ridiculous that we got swept by them last year, by the way.
Yeah.
Right. Whatever the Pistons were doing that previous year, they were trying in those games, but that was more like I put that more on Monty than like the organization because he kept playing Killian Hayes. It was like a whole thing. But yeah, normal tanking, like the Hornets for what, like they just couldn't figure out how to win games before Charles Lee. And even after Charles Lee last year, they were still trying to figure things out. So like that, I don't care about. And maybe it's just because it's the East. But like, what's the threshold of like, what is the amount of tanking that should matter? And obviously that depends on like, who does it impact? And there are different stakeholders in this that are like involved, right? We talked about the gambling companies. We've alluded to, if not, we haven't explicitly named like Sam Presti and the Thunder and other teams that own protected picks by these teams that are tanking. There's definitely other stakeholders in this. And we know that Sam Presti in particular, and probably other teams that are involved in like owning those picks are involved behind the scenes in like pushing this stuff for sure. And fans, obviously, of those teams and like that would attend those games, would watch those games or not. But I also just don't think that like, I don't know, are the Charlotte Hornets getting significantly more audience this year because they're winning games than when they were actively tanking? I don't know.
I think teams have to be a little bit more successful and winning games for longer to really pack in a stadium. Like I think it takes fans a while to come around to like continued success before they're just packing the stadium.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean,
that's fair because like even the Nuggets, right? Yeah.
Yeah. It took a while, like having Jokic and Murray to like get fans in. And I know Denver, they're really high on the Broncos
and they weren't even tanking. They were just bad.
They were just slowly moving up the ranks and finally got there. And they were really proud when they filled Ball Arena, or the Pepsi Center back then is what it was called. So
when did they change the name?
Not too long ago. It was, really only a few years or handful of years.
Anyway, I don't really have like a conclusion to draw from all of this talk about the tanking stuff. I'm curious to see which measures they actually enact for sure. I'm curious to see how it interacts with potential expansion teams, because when you think about expansion teams, and it may not end up being this way, I think about teams that are going to be bad for a few years. They want to maximize the, value of the picks that they're going to have initially for sure. Even though I'm pretty sure there will be some rules on the expansion teams. At least there were in like the WNBA where it's like the first year you can't pick in the top 5, for example, or like top 4 or something like that. Like regardless of your record kind of thing. But like even thereafter, like you're trying to build up like the value of like the roster and assets and that kind of thing. So you're going to want to be probably bad because you're not going to be an instant contender as an expansion team, unlike the what's the hockey team that like was it Vegas or LA? I think it was Vegas.
Yeah,
was it the Knights?
It was Vegas.
It was the Golden Knights that like were an expansion team and they won the championship. Like,
or they went to the
first year,
Stanley Cup in like the first year. Okay. And maybe it took them a couple years after that.
I think they won the chip like the next year. But yeah, that's I think
not
the
Tennessee
normal.
Titans did that too. Really? They went to the Super Bowl like in their first year and lost.
Wow. And then like never again.
Yeah.
That's shocking, actually. I'm curious how all this stuff is going to interact, and I'm with each other in the context of expansion for sure. All right, let's get to the juicy stuff today, Will, because there's a lot to say here. With our first main segment here, Calvin Booth went on Kevin O'Connor's show on Yahoo Sports to give a rather in-depth interview about what went down in Denver last year and his reflections on what went wrong, what he would have done differently, et cetera, et cetera. And so I've broken up my notes here, not chronologically because the interview jumps around a little bit, but in some little segments. I'm gonna kind of build up to the most controversial bits, but I want to talk about some of the meat first. So let's start with like some little nuggets, like just little things that were sprinkled in that I found interesting that I don't have like a grand conclusion about, but we're like, oh, like I'm learning something new from this interview that I didn't know before. It doesn't necessarily.
You don't want to just start killing him right away?
No, because I think
I'm kidding.
I'll have a more nuanced assessment of this by the end of it. So first thing that's jumped out at me in this interview is very early on. He talks about basketball character and that being something that he really looked for in players and what people should look for in players. Because the interview kind of started out letting Calvin expand on his roster philosophy and like the kinds of players that he's looking for, and basketball character in particular came up, and he differentiated it from character off court. And it effectively boils down to competitiveness. And he cited both Colin Gillespie, former Nugget, who was signed by Calvin Booth on a 2-way in 22, right before the title, and Dylan Brooks, and how those two guys have completely changed the basketball culture in Phoenix as a result of their basketball character. I thought that was interesting. It jumped out at me in particular because of the mention of Colin Gillespie, who Calvin both signed and also let go 2 years later. So there was like an interesting kind of interplay there. There was a discussion about, the best thing about Nikola Jokic, and like he was talking about his dedication to like the working out and like all of this stuff, and like how he got his got into like the shape necessary to deliver MVP seasons and title runs, etc. And Calvin said Felipe is the only one that Jokic listens to, and I believe that. But I thought it was an interesting comment because it implies that other people try to talk to him and like try to get him to do stuff, and it doesn't work. But when Felipe does, it does work, I should say. Mm-hmm. Another interesting nugget here. There was a part of the discussion where they talked about. Have you heard the full interview, by the way?
No, I only watched some of it, so I'm going to react to some of these comments.
Yeah. So there was a section where KOC was asking him about the post-title offseason and how difficult it was to replace guys like KCP and Bruce. And Calvin, like kind of unprompted, really brought up Jeff Green as a major loss for them that year. We were always talking about this backup power forward role, and like Jeff is like who he is and like the age that he is and all of that stuff. But it's been an issue for the team for like a few seasons now, for sure, that particular spot. But that jumped out at me because Jeff is not somebody that we've talked about a lot in terms of like, wow, like a real like hole appeared in the team when he was gone. Like we've talked about losing KCP the following offseason. We talked about like we knew they were going to lose Bruce. that offseason. We knew that the whole time. It had nothing to do with the Kroenkes being able to pay Bruce. Like, they were not allowed to pay Bruce what he got from Indiana, right? Like, they wouldn't have been able to match. I think they would have been able to pay like half of that. I need to double check because like the CBA was like slightly different then, because that first year had different rules than the years after. But he talked about they really wanted to keep Jeff Green, but the issue was the tax and the luxury tax that would have come along with his contract. It would have been like double, and he's like, I'm not going to ask ownership to. He didn't say this explicitly, but this is my like kind of anger translator paraphrasing of what Calvin said. He didn't say this angry, but I'd just be like, keeping it real. He basically said, like, I'm not going to ask ownership to pay $6 million in additional luxury tax for Jeff Green, right? Like, Jeff potentially would have been making $6 million, which would have cost them, because they were like over the luxury tax line, another $6 million. They were over the luxury tax line that year anyway, right? With the signings that they had, as part of the reason that we're facing the repeater tax next season, right? I will get to that, Vyacheslav, with some of the more expansive comments that Calvin made. But he's like, I'm not going to do that for Jeff Green, but maybe would have been willing to for other players. But like, even in the course of being like, we really wanted to keep Jeff, but like eventually he got like the Houston offer, and because he wanted 2 guaranteed years. I don't know if Houston gave him 2 guaranteed years, but I think he maybe he did, and then the rest were team options. I'm gonna look that up after I finish this part about Jeff Green. But I thought that was interesting because, like I said, we haven't talked about Jeff Green a lot as like a major loss from the title year. I don't want to immediately dismiss it just because it's Calvin and I disagree with so many things that he says, because I do think that particular position has been an issue for us. Brian Blackburn fan says Kroenkes allowed the Booth Malone drama to go so far and didn't want to pay Tim. Booth was brilliant scout because of easily kept him as that. Yeah, well, we'll get to that. We'll get to like the meat of the situation. Trust me. But I wanted to start with this other stuff. So Jeff wanted, just to highlight like the little details, at least 2 years, 12 million, so like 6 million per year, like 2 guaranteed years, and according to Calvin. And Jeff was like, "Are you gonna make me go out and like get an offer to have you guys match?" Because Calvin was like, we can't get them to pay like X amount in luxury tax to sign Jeff Green, right? Like additional luxury tax to sign Jeff Green. And so he goes out to Houston and he gets the offer that was $8 million a year. And I'm looking up now, which let's see, it was 2 years. Oh, it was 2 years, 16. So it was 2 years, 8 million each. I think the second year was a team option, so I don't think it was guaranteed, but he got more up front. And so at that point, the annual number is too high anyway. Like we already weren't willing to pay the 6 million. So it was like, okay, bye. I figured it like they were like Jeff for a minimum or nothing. I didn't realize that they were, in terms of like at least Calvin was like so attached to having Jeff as a player. What do you think of that as like someone that Calvin highlights in a conversation that was initially about losing Bruce and KCP from the championship run?
Yeah, I mean, Bruce, there was nothing he could have even done about that.
Yeah.
That team. KCP, I'm definitely more interested in. That hurt way more at the time and was much more controversial, and you could have many different perspectives on losing him, whether it was too much money or it was too old, and we had Peyton Watson coming up, and whatever rationale you have for that. I mean, it is interesting to hear about the behind the scenes directives from owners about the tax in the situation. Jeff Green is an interesting one, and I feel like he could be thought of differently depending on what you remember about his run with the Nuggets, because he was an up and down kind of player who would frustrate fans for being really bad on defense, but then coming in sometimes and having a huge dunk that got the team going and got the fans going. And he hit threes on occasion in that playoff run too. And I think his vet role was a little bit more appreciated after he left, when we kind of went through the whole drama with people talking about how the Nuggets didn't have really a vocal locker room with like Ish Smith gone and Jeff Green gone, and then it was only basically DeAndre Jordan filling in that role, and that was then cueing us to realize that Jeff Green was one of those vocal vets that the dudes really loved having around, and Uncle Jeff. And so I had mixed feelings when Jeff Green left. I was like kind of happy because I was kind of frustrated watching it, but the more time went on, I was like, yeah, it might have been nice to keep him. And we definitely kept saying we need to replace Jeff Green, and that's what we got.
Justin Holiday, it was like, and we were like, Peyton is the Jeff Green replacement in terms of like who's taking up those minutes at that forward spot, but he's not a 4, and it's like weird. And Zeke was not playing 4 either because he was playing 5 so much that season, at least early on, and that wasn't working out. It was like a lot of weird.
Yeah, it seems like we always need this type, like whether it's Jeff or Justin Holiday or whoever it is, and that's what was some of the frustration with Booth, was that we were going too young. Obviously, Project Dynasty, not enough vets. So is this like a way for him to say, like, I did want to keep a vet? You know, I know that was the critique, is that I didn't get enough vets for us. But
that's, you know, that's definitely like a point. Jeff really was the only one that he talked. Well, okay, not the only one that he talked about wanting to keep, because we can, before we transitioned to the part about KCP, I wanted to create like an alternate universe, because at no point in the last few years was I thinking like, oh, they should have kept Jeff Green, not at the number that he was getting, right, from Houston, because it didn't really make sense for us. But in an alternate universe, they give Jeff the 2 for $12 that he wanted at that time, and then they don't extend Zeke Nnaji. Then Jeff's money's off the books at this point, like right now, and we don't have to worry about like what is Zeke's contract going to mean for like extending Peyton, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously, it's like what spot are you in with like backup center? It's like the backup center has been trash anyway for the last few years, like before this one, and you know, it made some moderate improvement this particular season right now. But based on Calvin's comments about like, well, we can't guarantee him that second year. He was really talking about that second guaranteed year with Jeff being the issue with the tax. And even though they were over the luxury tax already, like for that season for 23-24, it was the 24-25 luxury tax he was really honing in on, which I thought was interesting because, and like spoiler alert, I think the real reason that Calvin doesn't ultimately get extended is because it was so difficult to move Dario and Zeke, which is what would have been necessary to get under the luxury tax last year. If there was one reason, I think that's like top on the priority list for ownership, which puts us in the, you know, staring down the barrel of the repeater tax. This season, they were able to dodge it, but next season probably won't be able to dodge it. But if you're worried about 24-25 tax, why are you extending Zeke Nnaji? Because his contract also goes into that year. So it felt like from this conversation, and in another universe where like Zeke is a player that the coaches don't hate, which he clearly is not the case, because even going into this season, like Zeke only plays when they are absolutely forced to bring him onto the court by like catastrophic injury luck. Giving a guy a 4-year contract, despite the issues with that, you know, are going to be there, because Calvin talks a lot about like the mandate from ownership and like from the organization, which he's referring to like KSE probably at that point, Kroenke Sports Entertainment, is to like be like close to that luxury tax line. Vyacheslav said he wanted to trade Zeke. He was sure he was worth $8 million. Yes, Vyacheslav, but as I have said time and time again on this podcast, in my article that I wrote about the issue with Zeke's contract, it was not about the annual number. It was about the length of that contract being the main difficulty with trading it.
That was so weird.
Like, with the player option. Anyway, I keep coming back to this because it keeps coming up. Like, the reason I keep coming back to this is because we still have 2 more years left of that contract right now. Is like, we are living with it. right?
Sometimes I'm talking to other fans about that and lamenting the contract, like, oh, Zeke is part of the reason why we can't do so many things. And they're always like, well, it's not really. He's only worth this much money. And
like you
blah,
can't
blah,
move
blah.
that money. It's not quite, but it's almost like having dead money on your books that's just like they're constraining you. Right? And again, like, regardless of what you think of Zeke as a player, the coaches clearly don't trust him and clearly didn't trust him back then. So the fact that you were, extending him to that degree with a contract that indicates we want to keep you, not a contract that indicates we want to trade you, which would have been a shorter deal. It just like, I think there was like a real disconnect there. And unfortunately, although I give Kevin O'Connor begrudgingly props for the way that he conducted this interview, they didn't get into the details of like the Zeke Nnaji contract or the like multi-year guaranteed deals to guys like Hunter Tyson, Jalen Pickett, etc. Okay. All right. Let's get to the comments about ownership. I think that's super relevant. So Calvin gets into the KCP of it all and the mandate from ownership being to probably at that point, what he meant was like stay under the second apron because we weren't getting under the luxury tax last year anyway, but also monitoring the situation for luxury tax in like future years, right? He kind of implies like they probably would have wanted to keep KCP if they could have at a lower number, but this stood out to me about the way that the situation went down. He said that they didn't offer KCP anything before he got an offer in free agency. And by then, he probably felt disrespected. Will, how many times during that off season, early off season, like immediately after the finals ended, was I like, there's a new rule in the CBA that says you can extend your own guys immediately after the finals are over and you don't have to wait until free agency. You don't even have to let them have the ability to talk to other teams. And he says they didn't even do that. Like we talked about, Malik Monk got extended by the Kings, and like Pascal Siakam got his max contract from the Pacers. OG Anunoby got his max contract from the Knicks within like days of the end of the finals. And we were like waiting. Nothing's happening for free agency. And so it's like, even though Calvin like does kind of sound like he maybe like we would have wanted to keep him if it was like a lower number, but he talks about like by the time Orlando comes around, like we just can't match that offer, and he felt disrespected. It's like I can't, like, the organization clearly doesn't want him back if you're not even because you could have potentially gotten him at a lower number. And I'm not saying that you should have done this, right? We've seen like KCP status fall off. You can debate like would he have been better here, there, whatever. But there was clearly a hole that was created with his absence that they never filled subsequently. So we have to talk about it. And I do think that the fact that they didn't even try to extend him at potentially a lower number, maybe without that like player option year, we don't know. Like he admits here, like there were no conversations with him before free agency. And so like, yeah, of course he felt disrespected. Right.
Yeah.
Right. And of course we knew that he was going to be like the top, after Paul George, like the top role player free agent on the market in free agency that year. And so, of course, like the teams that had cap space, in that case, it was Orlando, were like going to go after him. He said that like Dallas was trying to do, and we knew there were like reports of like Dallas trying to do a sign and trade type thing. And we thought that it was like Denver doesn't want to trade with like a conference opponent, and that's why that didn't work out. But Calvin made it sound like, yeah, his team at that point was like not interested in doing something like that because we like hadn't talked to them.
Yeah. I think it was obvious that we didn't want to bring him back. And there was reporting about how they weren't really looking to give him offers.
You can debate whether Vyacheslav said I would have been really happy at the time with like 3 years, $45 million. That contract would look very bad now. I agree, but you can debate how bad KCP would have looked here. You can also debate what having KCP here as a starter would have meant for what Denver ultimately had to pay Christian Brown.
Because you're delaying that a little bit longer. Yeah.
You're delaying like Christian like being a start. Like there's a lot of like interplaying. Like maybe Christian ends up signing for closer to like just above the MLE instead of. So that's almost like a KCP saving you. If Christian was making like 18 million a year next season instead of 25 million, it's like, well, that's saving 7 million. So KCP is actually cheaper than the number that like the sticker price to you. I'm not saying that would have been like the appropriate approach. I'm just saying we're talking about alternate universes here. And I'm not even blaming Calvin for KCP. This is just like things that we're learning about how they operated in particular moments. And it's clear that like they, in terms of the organization, was not interested in keeping KCP, because if they were, they would have tried to extend him sooner.
Was he trying to make it seem like the owners were the ones who didn't want to offer KCP? Because
I think so.
I feel like he is the main culprit of this. Because I felt like he didn't want KCP on the team because he wanted more room for Christian Brown and Peyton. That was like his whole thing.
What he got across in this interview, and he didn't say any of it directly, but to me it sounded like he said like, we would have wanted to do this. And I actually buy it, because there were certain other parts of the interview that he kind of glossed over something with like a player, and it was like a throwaway. The part about KCP and the parts about Jeff Green were not throwaways. Like he spent time on them in that interview. And so I was like, okay, like my ears are perking up because of the level of emphasis that he's putting on like this particular situation.
It's also just funny that it's with KOC, who like he, was the reporter who reported whatever the comment about be careful what you wish for. PY is better than Bruce.
And calling like a me guy.
And calling it. And
that was the comment that actually prompted him in that subsequent Summer League commentary segment that he was, in, where he was like, I didn't know, like he didn't say I didn't know that was on the record. He kind of implied that like, well, KOC didn't tell me that it was on the record. So I'm surprised that Calvin sat down with him again after that. Outside of that context, like KOC has given Calvin largely pretty favorable coverage. So his agent was probably like, this is the friendliest outlet that you could go to, actually. So, all right. The other things that Calvin said about ownership, he said that ownership doesn't value executives, which is true. Like this is like a known thing about the Kroenkes at this point. He said that was a factor in his firing, which is true. And I'll come back to this later. This is related to not just Calvin getting fired, but like the situation that he was in leading up to the firing with his contract. And then he just generally talks about financial constraints a lot. And he doesn't, I don't know if this is like a strategy by him. Like you said, like maybe the KCP thing was just like him trying to like pass the blame onto like somebody else. But he talks about the financial constraints as like the reason to go younger. Not that he had any like philosophical attachment to like that, roster construction. It was about the financial constraints kind of coming down from on high. I do think that is like is an exaggeration on his part. Like it's clear from his actions over the last few years in terms of like who he was talking to and what was like coming out of the organization about him, that he did have certain attachments to like certain players playing versus not. But it was probably a little bit of both, as we, I think everybody kind of agrees with that. Like him being like, yeah, I want to go younger, and ownership being like, great, that also means we get to go cheaper. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So now let's get to the actual, like, I think this was the ultimate goal from Calvin of this interview, which is him getting to really expand on his reflections, I should say, kind of loosely, because I don't know how much reflection has actually happened, on the fallout with Malone, the firing, and then the aftermath of all of that, and how it's like impacted his life. He said that he thinks the feud with Malone was ultimately overblown. And he says that the only evidence of the fallout was, quote, perceived gossip, which I found very interesting because KOC is kind of bringing, like, the way that this part of the interview went on was like, Booth was like, this was like the friction between me and Malone, I think, was overblown. And KOC is like, you guys both got fired with 3 games left in the season. So clearly there was some there. And then Calvin kind of coming back with the like, okay, well, what's your evidence that there was friction? And KOC is like, well, there were all of these media reports about discontent over coaching decisions, particularly minutes for certain guys, like young guys over vets, and I mean vice versa, I should say. And he named names. He's like Christian Brown, Peyton Watson, Jalen Pickett, like comes up in this as well. And Calvin calls this, he's like, so perceived gossip. And this was the part of the interview I was just like, I don't know what you're trying to do here, because I think everybody and their mom at this point knows that Calvin took to speaking to like particular local Denver media outlets often and always when it came to his frustrations over what was going on with the young players on the team with respect to their playing time and things like that. Whether like, I think that was a combination of like their agents, but also Calvin, like it was clear from the way that things were reported who the source was. So like the fact that he referred to it as perceived gossip when it's like, well, it was spread by you. Things about, who was playing well in practice versus not, and like how practice squads were getting like stacked against certain players and all that kind of stuff. Then Calvin escalates it further in terms of like, oh, I'm going to show you that the friction's being overblown by telling you that, well, there was never a physical altercation in front of people or a verbal altercation in front of people. And KFC's like, wait, so what's your physical altercation behind closed doors? Which I don't think is what Calvin meant to imply, but it was also just like, I mean, yeah, you get a pat on the back. Do you want a cookie for not physically fighting Malone over the course of this Cold War? Did you get to that part of the interview, or did you see the clips of him talking about the lack of a physical altercation being evidence that the friction was overblown? So I don't think nobody reported that there was a physical altercation. I don't think anybody thought that. And maybe he read the like heightened level of the coverage as being like, they're making it seem like we were fist fighting. And it's like, I don't know, like the tension was very high, clearly.
Yeah, that I was like, that is your excuse? Like, we didn't like get in a fist fight. That was so overblown. It's like, no, yeah, that was never what anyone was talking about, bro. And I mean, maybe he needs to rehab some of his value in the public perception, I think that's because he's like
the purpose of this interview was for him.
You don't want to be known as the GM that couldn't get along with anyone, including the coach and the front office and all that.
Yeah. So. Yeah, no, that's a good point. The next thing that jumped out at me from this section is he talked about like the overuse of the word alignment and how it's like, well, obviously when we won the title, like there was alignment. You can't win a title if there isn't alignment within the organization, blah, blah, blah. But he then also says that alignment in the way that people would have seen like, oh, if there was alignment in the way that like fans and like the media talk about, it would have meant like me laying down and not doing my job, and that wasn't going to happen. And I found that comment really interesting because in his eyes, the way that people were talking about alignment between front office and coach would have meant Calvin giving in to everything that Malone wanted, which some GMs do. They just like defer to the coach. And I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing, but Calvin takes that a step further and says, if I would have done that, that would have been me not doing my job. And I found that mindset to be very, very interesting because it was like a level of like, I don't know if stubborn is even the right word. It's just like a lot of like nearsightedness about like my way is the only way that would have been like acceptable. It's not even like, well, I would have been doing a bad job if I would have just, it was like, it would have been me not doing my job if I would have done alignment in the way that he perceives people meant alignment. Right.
Demon says it sounds like boomer speak.
I mean, it is. It's like synergy. Like, the next part about the firing, I found this so interesting, that this section, because it like really gave you like a glimpse into his mindset. He emphasized that the day of the firings, like Malone got fired first, and he kind of, I don't know if this was a direct quote or him just like paraphrasing, but he basically thinks that he only got fired next, like that same day. Because I remember like we were thinking like, oh my God, Malone got fired. And then the Booth thing was like a few minutes later. But there was like some like tension there while we were not waiting, because I didn't know what was going to happen next. I didn't necessarily think anything was going to happen next. But Calvin thinks he only got fired to make the point that the Kroenkes weren't picking sides. And he was told, quote, "We don't want there to be a winner." And he was palpably pissed off about this quote, because he's like, winners and losers is like talk about games. And like, this isn't a game. It's my life. This, that, and the other. I do want to engage with this because I can understand that feeling of like, so you wanted to fire the coach, but because there was like a feud, you don't want don't want it to seem like you're picking sides. So you're just firing me. I will say at this point that he got fired, they didn't extend him the previous summer. Extension talks had stalled that like October or November. And they were like, I guess we revisit this in the off season, but it was looking like they weren't going to give him anywhere near what he was asking for. I don't know what Calvin was asking for, but I feel like regardless of how I feel about Calvin, I feel very confident that the Kroenkes were probably lowballing him. And I've said that before when we were getting those reports about those extension talks. So it seemed like he wasn't going to get extended that summer anyway. Right. So I want to engage with like the way that Calvin felt in this moment about like, this isn't a game. It's my life. But I want to say like on this point, they probably did him a favor firing him when they did, instead of like waiting till the offseason to do it. Because, the Nuggets made it through the second round. They went to game 7. So that's like early May at that point. So at least being let go early gave him an opportunity to interview for a bunch of other open front office jobs that were, opening up that, April or March and April. Right. So I want to engage with it because I understand like the emotions in that moment, like regardless of how you feel about Calvin. If you feel like you did your job or were doing your job and like you're getting fired because of some perceived feud and they fired the coach and they want to just like even things out, like I get that feeling, because like as the oldest sibling, there were all these times when you like get in some kind of dumb altercation with your younger siblings and they had started it. And then your parent comes in and they're like, well, everybody gets punished. I don't know what happened, but everybody gets punished. And you're like, but I literally didn't do anything. Like, I get that feeling. So I want to empathize with him in this moment, but then ultimately conclude that they did you a favor by firing you when they did, because you had the opportunity to get other jobs. And it probably would have been an even drier job market if they'd waited. And they weren't going to keep you. Like, the only reason that you would feel that way, and like, I think justifiably, like, and holding on to it, and he's held on to it for a long time. You could tell he was still like really feeling that part. Is if you thought there was a chance that like they would have kept you. And I just don't think that was the case, just because of the money issue with the extension. Calvin also said that he felt that he was maybe too idealistic in thinking that a coach, under the amount of pressure that Malone was under in terms of, being in the trenches day to day, feeling like you could get fired at any game, and we literally saw that happen, would just execute the plan. The plan being like, affectionately dubbed by Harrison Wind over at DNVR as Project Dynasty, which is like playing the young guys as much as possible, et cetera, et cetera. And Calvin doesn't call it that, but he just kind of generally is like, execute the plan. He doesn't say what the plan exactly was, but he kind of implies that it's about like the youth, right? And I think that this part was Calvin trying to empathize with Malone, or sound like he was empathizing with Malone, but it more kind of came off as a bit condescending, as like, well, I couldn't expect this guy to like do it given the situation that he was in. I do think that there were parts of this interview where Calvin was like trying, but like just barely missing the mark with like what he was trying to accomplish in terms of like how he was trying to portray himself and the situation, and like his level of reflection on the situation, because it's kind of, the interview reminds me of a book that you write, like a memoir you write when you're going through something really difficult, and then ultimately you wrote the book too soon and it kind of reads like an angry diary instead of like a thoughtful reflection. And like this interview for Calvin felt like something in between those two things. So I do think there were moments where he's trying to reflect, but like still hasn't like gotten like to the point yet. He says that he might have been hired if he had been more open to assistant general manager or lower jobs, but that the perceived feud hurt his job prospects. He said, like, he just says this part open very explicitly. And then this was like one of the weird parts of the interview that kind of brings me into the last segment of it, which is the WTF moments. And this is where like the juicy quotes that are circulating on social media came from that I want to like put in context. He cited, quote, working with a coach like Malone as a first-time general manager as an impressive thing for his resume. And I did not take that as like a positive thing of like, I worked with this great coach. I think he was talking like it in the context of this section of the interview, it very much felt like this is a really stubborn guy. And I think the fact that I worked with him for as long as I did should actually inure to my benefit when it comes to how my resume is perceived. And I was just like, why did you say that? That was very strange. And if he did mean it another way, he should have said it in another way, but that's not like, I took it as like, okay. And he doesn't have that many digs at Malone throughout the interview, but whenever they come up, they're just like, ugh, you know? In terms of like how, like, however you feel about Malone, like it doesn't look good if you're going on an interview to show there wasn't a feud and that like the tension was overblown and that people should give you another chance because I work well with others, I promise. And then like throwing these like little jabs in there. Exactly like chemistry. There's a weird thing to say in the same interview where he's pretending the feud was overblown. I agree. And then the last part of this section about like what makes a good GM. KOC actually asked him specifically, what makes Sam Presti so successful as a general manager? And Calvin just answered attention to detail. And I thought that was so interesting because I thought that he lacked that in space.
Yeah, he did. Was not aware of he could have been more attentive to the details in the CBA, which he clearly wasn't at all.
And we didn't, and like the interview didn't even cover that part, which I don't blame KOC for. I actually thought that he did a good job of like pushing back on Calvin, which is why we get all these nuggets. He like would really dig in with a question and then just let Calvin talk, but then like not just freely, like he would pick at certain things, which is why we got all this detail. All right, let's get to the WTF moments. This one is not actually that big of one, but it kind of implies something that's just kind of like, how do you not get this? Like the WTF moments in this interview were very much like, this guy is still lacking in like the self-awareness necessary to be able to have a successful enough reflection on the situation such that he can convey that he has reflected on the situation. He kind of is resentful of the idea that the expectation of him was to bat 1,000. That was the exact quote there. And I just have so much to say about that, because I think that he put him, with his plan and like with his approach, he put himself in the position where not batting 1,000, like not getting every like draft pick right, hamstrung the team because of the lack of roster flexibility. Like that's the kind of thing. Like a lot of people talk about certain GMs as like meh because they never make any splashy moves. They don't necessarily go after the big thing, or they never have like the like home run trade or like the home run draft pick. But they're able to survive because they keep the team and like the books in a situation where they can always change. Like we can always shift. I'm not saying that that's necessarily always the best approach. Sometimes you need to go all in. Sometimes you need to lock yourself into certain configurations in order to, reach like your ultimate peak. But Calvin, in my opinion, did not do either of those things. Like hamstrung the flexibility and it wasn't like to the end of like, this is like the home run thing in this moment. Because sometimes being a GM is like being a day trader. Like being too early is almost as bad as being wrong, if not worse. If you, which I learned from The Big Short. And we've talked about like the Zeke contract, the multi-year deals, all that stuff. The moves had to work out. Otherwise, like the team's in like a really tough situation where they have to move a 2032 second round pick to move, MPJ's contract to get any kind of depth, et cetera, et cetera. Have to move a 2032 second round pick to get rid of Hunter Tyson's expiring contract on its own, which is like insane to me because like he's done. Like he has a team option next year. This is insane. Despite all of this, later in the interview, unprompted, he actually made a point that I've been harping on for a couple of years, which is specifically with Christian and Peyton. They played a lot. And he said this, like, this was not like asked for by KOC. He said the coach developed them. Like that was the quote. And he also said, quote, 2 guys breaking through to the rotation is about as much as you can ask for. And I'm like, then why are we putting all our eggs in like 6 guys? Like we need all of them to work out. So like that part, I was like, okay, you've done the reflection on that bit, but then not tying it to the greater, issue. And maybe he would have if he was asked specifically about like these like multi-year guaranteed deals and like trading all the future draft capital, and et cetera, et cetera. And again, despite this related to like the leaking that was happening about, being upset with like guys' minutes. And we know that stuff was coming from him. Yeah. So that was frustrating. The batting 1,000, like, why does everyone expect it to be perfect? It's like your plan necessitated that. Right.
Well, and it's weird too, because he's like, I was expected to be perfect, then had comments about how, well, I needed to be doing my job and like pushing back and being very confident about all my moves. And it was like he was almost setting the expectation for himself because he thought he was batting 1,000. I just feel like he never thought anything he did was wrong ever or was mismanaged. Yeah. And that's my problem with the whole thing. He just does not seem aware.
What's interesting is like, he was like, you bring up an interesting point because he's like, well, the expectation was for me to bat 1,000. And like, okay, so him saying that implies that he knows not everything was perfect. So I would be curious to know what he saw as like the major, like part, like the major mistakes. What were the things that contributed to like the thing not being perfect, because he spends a lot of time early in this interview talking about how, like, I should have a job right now. Like, I drafted a bunch of great guys. We had a great roster. We had good records, et cetera, et cetera. I would like to know in his eyes what the mistakes were. And that was maybe like a missed opportunity, not just by KOC, but by Calvin, to be like, okay, these are the missteps that I actually acknowledge. And I just don't think that that was like that opportunity was taken within this interview to do that. And that, I think that would have been interesting, because he might not have stated the same things that like fans complain about necessarily. But just like I found the Jeff Green portion so interesting, because it was like, oh, okay, that's something that like nobody has talked about since 2023, and nobody was talking about at the time as like such a major blow to the roster. But like he saw that as like someone that they wanted to keep. The player options, completely agree, Vyacheslav. It was a lot. All of that stuff meant less and less flexibility down the road. Yeah. So the next line related to this, the lack of self-awareness, that is, he said, quote, I think you could put 100 GMs in my situation and 3 or 4 of them maybe handle the situation as well as I did. Quote, I just made it look too easy, in reference to the title being won in 2023.
This is maybe the worst comment. This is the biggest what the fuck comment.
And I was telling people, like, yes, the clip is like slightly out of context, but if you listen to it in the interview in context, it has the exact same impact, because it basically that's exactly what he meant in that moment. I thought it was funny that he talked about how, like, well, not many guys could have done what I did, because he also says that anyone in the same position would have done the Cam for MPJ trade. So it's like, okay, are you special or are you not? I don't know. It's funny because he then devalues exec work immediately when he says, like, well, anyone would have done the Cam for MPJ trade. Right.
Yeah.
And related to this, and this is the clip that I wanted you to bring up, Will. Bring up the championship isn't real clip. So I just want to like let everybody hear this one, and then we'll talk about it on the other side.
I think the one thing that's been it's almost like the championship isn't real in Denver. They never talk about it. All they do is talk about the next one. I don't think some people without the organization really realize how hard it is to win. I think it just happened too easily. And I think a lot of people in that community take it for granted.
Was it easy though? I mean, there was playoff losses.
I mean, for pretty much there wasn't the bad. Well, there wasn't Scottie Pippen. I mean, we had our own kind of adversity, but it was different. Like Jamal missed the year with an ACL, Mike's out with a back. It wasn't Scottie Pippen getting clubbed by Bill Laimbeer and leaving the game with a migraine, and then the next game, like.
Yeah, that one kind of offended me.
There's a
people
lot.
Just don't talk about the championship. We just already forgot it.
There's a lot to unpack there. So I want to put it in the context of, he's referring to the fact that they won in 2023. And this is also what he was talking about when he's like, I just made it look too easy, like, because of like all the great roster moves that I did that previous summer. And then the team made it, like, he talks about it in the championship part too, where he's like, the team made it look too easy, because like they didn't really face like that much adversity in the title run, and all that stuff. So a lot to unpack there. First thing, I want to let you, Will, as a diehard Denver Nuggets fan for years and all that, I want to let you just like engage with how you felt hearing that. Was that your first time hearing it, or did you hear it in like the prep for the show? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like, yeah, it does offend me a little bit that he's like, no one talks about it. Everyone forgets about it. And like, it's like he was the one who achieved this great feat that no one appreciates, and just wanting to take so much credit for it. And we still debate. I mean, some people even said Tim kind of had the KCP trade lined up, and then Booth came in and took it over. I don't know the truth of how much Booth
Calvin
had that trade.
basically says that that's how that works because anybody would have done the Cam for MPJ trade.
Yeah, and he did sign Bruce. That was pretty much all he did for that year. He did draft CB, and CB did turn out amazing and did help us win the title for sure. And yeah, like I don't want to get into the debate of how easy the path was. I mean, that's something that opposing fans used to troll us to say that it was too easy. But we were just the most dominant team that year. It was a little bit weaker of a year. You know, the Thunder went around then. Celtics were still trying to like figure out how to put together a full playoff run. But I just think Booth is taking too much credit. And I do think people talk about the championship a lot. He's right that it is hard to repeat. But I feel like his whole ethos of let's win a couple championships here and there because it's so hard was kind of trying to give himself an excuse to not be maximizing the Jokic window. And yeah, Vexlov brings up greed for a dynasty might have tarnished some of what we were trying to do, but I don't know. I feel like maybe we should have been more greedy.
You could look at that a little bit differently because you could say, I mean, thank you to, Harrison Wynn again, affectionately dubbing Calvin's kind of plan with the youth as Project Dynasty as like that being the greed for the dynasty. It's like you're greedy for too many contending years.
Yeah, Booth needed to try to keep floating this thing, and the direction that he turned just was not the right direction. And really, we could have won more championships potentially had he, been more willing to sign some other people. I get that the ownership's part of this too because of financial constraints. But yeah, like other people in the chat are bringing up, the team was built long before he got there. Jokic and Murray were the core. Malone had been there a long time. So for him to come in 1 year, act like he was the reason why they finally got over the hump and won the title and therefore deserved all this cushion to do whatever he wanted and he should have been the sole authority and never been questioned. It just shows that it just went all to his head. He's basically an egomaniac, in my opinion, and just thought every decision he made was like a gift from God itself. And I would have liked him to be a little more down to earth, a little more collaborative with Jokic and Malone. And I thought it was insane that he tried to come over and take over the franchise, essentially, when it's clear that Jokic has a voice and a vision, Malone has a voice and a vision, and he probably should have been a little more hands off in that regard and been more greedy with bringing.
Well, that would have been
talent.
laying down and not doing his job well. If he hadn't done exactly what he wanted to do, that would have been not doing his job.
He did not have a good understanding of what the job required.
I do. So I want to unpack a couple things about this one because this was the one that I was like, I don't like how that feels for fans because he talks about people within the organization, outside of the organization, and then specifically talks about the community taking the championship for granted. And I just I want to engage with that a little bit because do fans take the championship for granted? Some do a bit, yes. But I probably take it more for granted than anyone. That's probably because I'm like a newer fan, right? But there are so many people who have lived through Nug life. I only know about Nug life because and are just like undyingly grateful for the championship. But using Calvin's framework, like it feels like from his perspective, fans are like that want to talk about the next championship, or fans or people within the organization are trying to make up for those years that were lost because of the injuries to Jamal, to MPJ. But obviously people feel that way because Jokic is clearly an all-time great player and is conceivably here to stay in Denver. Unlike this isn't the Toronto Raptors in 2019 where they're like, dude, we got our chip and we knew Kawhi was out of here. So of course we're like super grateful for, 2019 and we don't care about anything that happens after this, right? That's not the situation that Denver's in. So it's kind of like, okay, it's okay to have standards based on like Jokic being an all-time great player. I don't think if Jokic was not an all-time great player, like clearly like top 10 potential, I don't know that people would feel that way where it's like, I think it's okay. I think it's okay to admit that you take the championship for granted a little bit and just be like, yeah, I'm hungry for more. It also feels like I said, the argument about not understanding how hard it is to win can be turned on its head. I think some people think validly that you need to take advantage of the opportunities that are in front of you, like the, limited contending window that's limited because of the injuries that happened earlier, instead of trying to build some like long-term sustainable thing. Like that could also be seen as greedy or like short-sighted in a way, because you're not, or like long-sighted, far-sighted, because you're not seeing, like, you're not appreciating what's in front of you in terms of like the opportunity, right? And I think that one thing that's interesting is I have a note here about offensive versus defensive team building, and it's not about offense defense like in the basketball terms kind of way. I mean, like, trying to capitalize on opportunities as they arise, in terms of like, oh, I'm just going to be opportunistic. Like, we're going to grab a chip in an off year because like we've just been like this sustainable thing, and like, oh, now we can pounce, versus, a team building philosophy that, in terms of like the timeline, that is like forcing the issue, like, no, we want to be the best team right now. And I'm not saying that that is an easy like decision to make or balance to strike at all. I just feel like he doesn't really engage with that side of it, and like why people feel the way that they do, and is just kind of dismissive of the idea of people being like having a sense of urgency, frankly, for the team that is in front of them. Because you could say that people, you could on one hand say like they don't appreciate the team because they're not winning championships, like the teams of the last few years. It's like no West team has made the playoffs consecutively over the last like 8 seasons besides the Denver Nuggets, right? On the other hand, you could say that those same people appreciate the team even more because they recognize how talented they are and what they could do if they just had a few more pieces in front of them. And I think that even if you agree with ultimately like the view that Calvin takes, I think it's important to engage with how, like, why people feel the way they feel on the other side, because I think those viewpoints are very valid, right?
Plus the players
Yeah.
kind of treat it this way. They won the championship, they enjoyed it, then they go into the next season and the goal is get it, like, win the championship and do your best. And I think Jokic has said plenty of quotes about this, like the past is the past. I'm focused on now, like focusing on this team. That was a different team. Now we come in, figure something out. That's like a very pro level of thinking. And I think it's fine to appreciate one championship and know that Jokic is such a generational player that we want more for him, because that's what the player of his caliber typically does. And this is a new parody era, blah, blah, blah. This is like everyone listening right now and in the chat can relate to this, that, we're trying to enjoy the team and watching Jokic play and watching Murray having his best season, but we also are seeing these struggles. The injuries really suck. And it's this constant battle of like really enjoying Jokic, not taking him for granted. Don't take the one championship for granted. If we only get one championship, we probably should all be happy with that in retrospect, but we know that there's a lot of potential.
Right.
Jokic,
it's like,
and like
Jokic
not going to come around a lot.
Like Jokic always says with his awards, his MVPs, whatever, like when it's all over, like when I hang it up, I'm going to appreciate my trophies and whatnot, but I'm like in it in the moment. That's probably how fans are going to feel about this era, regardless of how many chips they win. If they win any more, it's like, yeah, like they're going to appreciate the hell out of it. But like when you're in it, it's like, I want to squeeze as much out of this, as I can in the moment. Out of this team. And I don't know. I'm not saying that is like the only view to take or that it's correct. I'm just saying that Calvin was very dismissive of it in a way that I really felt was unfair, both to people in the organization and the community around Denver that, that follows this team. That's like the main, like, those are like the main WTF moments. There's definitely other things in there, like him drawing inspiration from the 2 timelines plan and the Golden State Warriors. I actually encourage people to listen to the interview. I came away from it feeling like my takeaway about Calvin is that he's still lacking in the level of self-awareness that I would want out of a high-level executive in a company, in a sports team. Clearly thinks very deeply about roster building philosophies, but that's not the only part of the job. And I thought the interview was very interesting. It definitely challenged some of my ideas, as I talked about here, about roster building, about even my own sports fandom when it came to this stuff with the championship stuff. And I thought it was very in depth. So I actually encourage people to listen to it, because I think that you could really learn something, and maybe you'll catch even other snippets that like tell you something about how the organization was operating over the last few years that make you think differently about the team. All right, let's jump into Denver Nuggets. We got to talk about this post All-Star break haze, Will, here. So
some basketball.
They've gone 500 since they got out of the break, right? Lost to the Clippers in a clutch game that shouldn't have been a clutch game. They beat the Portland Trailblazers in the biggest regular season win in franchise history. It was like 54-point victory. With the most points that I've ever seen the team score. I don't think I'd ever, since I've been following the team since 2023, I've never seen them score over 150 points. So that was fun. Took that awful L against Golden State. That was like their worst clutch time performance, maybe ever, that I've ever witnessed, in terms of like no scores for us, all the scores for the other team. Just like, I think the Warriors went on like a 20-2 run in like 2 minutes. It was insane. And then last night they took a W against Boston at home, a nice home victory, which those are few and far between for this team, it feels like. And I want to jump into this game because it was the most recent. And I think that there was a lot of good to take away from this game, especially defensively. And then on the other side of it, we can talk about like how sustainable any of it is, because it feels like this team is a different team every single game. Like there is not a pattern to the victories. There's not a pattern to the losses, which is, Matt Moore over at Locked On Nuggets, friend of the show, always talks about like how inconsistency is like the worst thing to be as a team, because you'd rather at least know you're bad. Not that this team is bad. They're clearly not. They're, I think they're back to being the 3 seed as of like this moment in time in the West. But in terms like relative to the expectation of the team, like it's not a great position to be in. But let's jump into the Celtics game and see like what are the things that we can potentially take away heading into this this home stretch of the season. Double meaning there, because they're gonna have so many home games over this month. All right, so Jamal went out early in this game with nondescript illness, and then David Adelman told us after the game that oh man, what was the quote? He said all kinds of bodily things were happening. So take that for what you will. Did you see that quote yesterday?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, this was post game. He was asked about Jamal. I'll just give you the full quote. He looked awful. They gave him all the medication. It did not help. All kinds of bodily things were happening. So yeah, Jamal left the game. He did not come back after halftime. It was not great. Vyacheslav mentioned since All-Star, we've played 3 great defensive games besides Golden State. I agree with that. I think the first game was actually pretty good defensively until the clutch. So clutch time defensive woes again. Portland game was good throughout. It helped that Portland couldn't drop, a penny in the ocean in terms of shot making. And then Golden State was just like a really bad performance in the first half and then again in the clutch. So it was like, all right, let's see how this works out. Trevor leans. I don't know if SGA is playing tomorrow because he's, I think, still out with the abdominal strain.
It was announced while we were streaming that he is going to be playing tomorrow. So.
Oh, he's back. Okay, great.
And I figured he would come back just to play us that little sneaky son of a bitch.
I mean, sure. That's kind of weird because like an abdominal strain is not really something to. I mean, like Franz and Paolo missed
very vague.
Like multiple months with. Yeah, that's funny.
You can be out like
SG is
going
to be available for sure. Was he upgraded? Oh, he's just not on the injury report anymore. That's interesting.
Whoa.
That's weird because he's been out.
Just was sitting out till they had to play us.
Yeah,
little diva.
I mean, they're the 1 seed. Like, he can sit as many games as he wants. Although the Spurs are catching up. The Spurs are catching up, and they have tiebreaker. Jokic was shooting tour dates in this game, and it was really different. It wasn't just him. Like, nobody could make a 3, but Jokic couldn't make anything for, like, most of the game until that third quarter.
It was so hilarious.
He did. He got 30 points on 28 shots, which is the group chats were like, it's a very Carmelo Anthony stat line. 4 of 13 from 3, 13 3-point attempts is like, what are we doing? Someone mentioned like he's just taking threes so that he can save all his energy on defense. For defense, I think he's been playing like he played a really good defensive game yesterday, and also against Portland. Clippers iffy, definitely not against Golden State.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it was weird. He was so confused against Golden State almost.
Oh my gosh, we have a fake Trevor Lanes account.
Yeah,
covers the Lakers.
There's a real Trevor Lanes.
I don't think the guy covering the Lakers would refer to our defense not being that bad against Boston.
No.
Unless they're referring to the Lakers playing Boston recently.
We played a similar defense that the Lakers did against the Celtics, and it worked out a lot better for us than for the Lakers, obviously.
Yeah, this person is definitely not Trevor Lanes.
No.
I also don't think he spells his name with a Z.
Maybe he's just cool though.
Sure. Love him on the NBA front office show, by the way, with Keith Smith. Boston being on a back-to-back certainly helped, and it was a 3 and 4 actually for them, a 3 and 4 at altitude. So, but we don't always take advantage of those spots. So, like, I'll take it. Man. Like, I will take literally anything I can get when it comes to a good defense.
And Jaylen Brown rested; he didn't play the night before, and they were just playing the Suns. They don't have.
He was terrible last night, by the way.
Yeah, he was terrible. So I don't even want to hear the like, oh, he got so tired because it was the back-to-back. He didn't play the back-to-back, but he was really bad, and I think we did a good job. But he also was a little off.
Yeah. We even got a solid Zeke stint in this game in the first half. I don't think DA played him in the second half. Did he even play in garbage time? Now that I think about it, I guess he must have because we don't have that many players available. But he played for like 5 minutes in the first half after Jamal went out and like couldn't come back. And then we also got some KJ Simpson minutes. We're going to talk about him. It was a difficult game scoring, obviously, based on the final score. 103 is well below the season average. Even like where we sit in most of our losses, like Denver has largely not had this level of difficulty with scoring. If someone would have told me that they had 77 points through 3 quarters, I've been like, we're down double digits at least, not up double digits at that point. Let's talk about Bruce because I think that he really set the tone defensively, particularly at the point of attack. Bring up his first steal. I thought he was just really good on Jaylen Brown. Really bothered him at the point of attack. I thought he was good on Derek White too. Like I just like felt Bruce throughout the entire game defensively, and I think that he probably was like the Celtics' worst nightmare on the third game in 4 nights. All right. So here he is, the point of attack, chases JB over the screen. This was a nice, like, actually, like, Jokic is the one that pokes it away. I thought that Jokic and Bruce together was a really good blitzing combo in this game. They were just not giving space and making the ball handlers really uncomfortable. And on this Boston Celtics team, like, they have guys that can dribble, but, like, they're not great dribblers. Like, you can bother them. Impressive dunk by Tim there.
Yeah, reaching
also
kind of
with Derek White like trailing him.
You know, the second that you pause in an action, you're going to lose some kind of advantage. And Jaylen Brown definitely, for some reason, weirdly kind of standing there with the ball coming off of that, and it allows Bruce to be aggressive and reach around the backside and get a steal, which is not something you see a lot when you're like trailing a guy in an action. So yeah, he was just being really aggressive and physical. So I'm glad to see Bruce is doing that. Hopefully that keeps up.
Yeah. If you could bring up the second Bruce Steele 2. This was a nice, I think this was the one. Okay, so this was just again, I mean, Bruce doesn't do that. He like just bothers to dribble, and this was like a really great wingspan matters moment because like Christian can't make this play.
You don't think?
No. No. Because he wouldn't be able to reach the ball. And maybe JB loses the ball, but like Christian doesn't get a fingertip on it. And this is one of the ways that larger wings can actually, that are decent ball handlers, can really get around Christian or like not really be bothered by him. And I just thought that like, yeah, Jaylen Brown had a really bad night. He was like, it's not my 3rd and 4, but like I have to create a bunch of stuff, and like Bruce Brown's all up in my grill, and it just didn't look fun to be Jaylen Brown last night, which was great. Like I would love to see opposing stars look like they're having a terrible time against us. Like, it's been so long since we were like, this guy has just not having fun out there. Usually they're like out there, like they're doing trick shots against us and just like dribbling around us and whatever. And I just thought Boston had a terrible time last night. And I love to see that, not just because it's Boston, but because it meant that we were playing like really good physical defense. And I thought, like, again, Bruce really set the tone.
Yeah. Good to be back.
There's another play here. If you could bring up the Derek White 3. So this ultimately ends with, as evidenced by the title of the clip, a Derek White 3. But I thought Bruce had really good. Is this the Derek White 3? Oh, this is
JB shooting over.
Yeah, that was just like, I just thought that Jaylen didn't really feel Christian in this game. But Bruce gets screened and recovers, I think, quite well. But ball kind of swings around to Derek White and he makes that 3 anyway. But I'm looking here, like, how did he get because like Tim like rotates and then Cam was just kind of late to that rotation, I guess.
Man, I looked at this play a lot too because I really liked. I actually did bring this clip up for a Jokic drop because we were doing this where we were trying to force JB into a mid range, which is great.
Right.
And then Bruce had an amazing contest on it. And I was like, oh, this is all amazing. I really like this. And I did think this is a reason why we did, hold Boston to a bad Jaylen Brown game. But yeah, like it's unfortunate they get the 3 out of it. Cam probably needed to rotate faster. It's just tough one. It's tough on the weak side.
I think it's like you don't know what Bruce is going to do in that moment, but yeah, you needed Cam to rotate faster.
I mean, he tried, but he probably
you got to be aware of Derek White. He's their best, most reliable, I should say, shooter.
Yeah.
I thought this was honestly like funny to transition after that clip, but it was a really solid 2-way Cam Johnson game, which is funny because he only had 11 points. But I thought that offensively, he had a lot of impact with like connective passing and just the points that he did have felt really big. And then defensively, like just continues to be solid. A lot of people were like noticing it last night because the whole team was playing well defensively. But Cam's been playing well on defense basically since game like 3 or 4. Like I remember the first couple games of the season, I was like, oh no, Cam Johnson is literally like getting blown by every possession. Like he looks worse than MPJ at the point of attack. It was really bad. And then since then, he's been really good. And honestly, most nights that he's played, because obviously he's missed time with injury, the best point of attack defender on the team in terms of just being solid and like being like staying in position, not getting blown by, navigating over screens, like being consistent about it. Right. So if you could bring up the Cam forced turnovers. I forget if there's just one here. So this was very early in the game. He's got like Jaylen Brown again trying to drive and just like loses the ball because Cam just like stays solid, keeps his hands up, and yeah, I don't know what Jaylen Brown was like trying to do there. Maybe he was trying to draw a foul. He kind of pushes Cam, but Cam stays solid enough. He gets out of the way, but he stays solid enough that like JB loses his balance and then loses the ball.
Yeah, he was doing that push off arm all night. That is definitely a thing, which we'll get in and we'll bring up again later. I think you had another one though for Cam.
Another turnover. So this is the transition finish. Nice, actually contested the rim to cause this to force this fast break in the first place. Yeah, you just let it play.
Brown kind of forcing it a bit.
They were missing a lot of like bunnies at the rim. The Celtics were in the second half of this game. Nice pass from Tim, and that was not going to be an easy finish based on the angle of that pass and where Cam's momentum was taking him. That could have been an and one, honestly.
And Vooch did literally nothing on that, and he did nothing all night.
I didn't realize that Vooch played until I was looking at the box score and saw 22 minutes.
He missed every shot.
Now looking at him, I'm like, oh, that's who that player was, but he didn't look like Vooch. Like he's not really. Ironically, maybe perhaps just not involved in their offense. Whereas I thought they were just going to use him as like a pick and pop Al Horford replacement. But I was like, I didn't even realize he was on the floor.
And it's funny because Al Horford did cook us pretty badly in that Warriors game, and we were not ready.
He looked like the league MVP in that game.
Jokic was not ready to be covering Al Horford the way he was spreading the floor, and then Vucevic came out and just looked like not even close to what Al Horford's doing.
Yeah.
Which is pretty great for Boston haters.
If you could bring up the other sweet dime from Tim, I think when I tweeted, I'd mistakenly credited this to KJ Simpson, but this was actually like a really nice pass from Tim. Again in transition, like he's actually a pretty good transition passer. Right on the money. Spencer gets free throws.
Rough fall
for sure. So just wanted to group that with the transition finish to highlight like Tim
good to see the
does
pace.
Pass the ball sometimes. So I wanted to give him credit for that. But back to Cam, if you could bring up the pull-up threes clip. So like I said, like Cam's points felt very impactful in this game where like nobody was scoring. So this is very early on, and it's just I was kind of surprised when he pulled and like when he took that shot because he often hesitates on that because he's like waiting to see does Jokic steal? Does he get open? JB, I think he was just playing for the entry pass there. I don't exactly know what Jaylen Brown was trying to do. His own player
screened him.
Okay. And then, but he doesn't follow Cam. He follows, he kind of goes with Jokic. So
that was a horrible decision by him.
Cam probably doesn't take that if JB tries to contest, if I'm being honest.
No. I love seeing a 3-man action with those three guys and Cam being super quick.
They did that a lot in this game.
That's great. And I don't think we have clips of it, but even just Cam running pick and roll with Valanciunas in the second unit is just beautiful. I wish they would do it more. And we did get to see, I think we got to see it more because Jamal got sick. Like, I mean,
DA has gone away from the Jamal stagger.
Okay. So maybe it wasn't just because of that.
Largely. I would love a dual Cam and Jamal stagger like we had at the beginning of the year, but obviously with the injuries and whatnot, it's a little difficult. But
hard to do that.
We've usually had Jamal or Cam with Jokic off, not both. And it's been Cam for the last few games. If you could bring up the second Cam pull up here. I loved this one because it was in transition. If you could just let it play here. So Bruce, nice contest on Derek White. Derek White's like, okay, got to take the ball. Derek White's here. Or Cam gets the ball. Yeah, Sam Hauser's like, we're playing for the rim. Like, don't let them get the 2 because it's Denver. But Cam recognizes that and takes the 3 that's available and open to him. And that's what you do. And I noted here, the Celtics were really tired because Derek White didn't even try to get a rear contest and block this. Like he is down the floor and he had taken the ball, like Christian had the ball and he was trying to pick him up full court. But Derek White is usually like flying all over the place. And I think that he actually made some like fatigue based errors on offense too, like some weird turnovers. He didn't have a lot, but the ones he had were like, what were you trying to do there? And then defensively, although he had some nice plays, it's not the same as when he gets to be like the 4th or 5th option and just like wreck things on defense and that kind of thing. So you kind of see how these players kind of evolve in their roles when they have to step up and like soak up the usage that Jason Tatum, would be. Okay, let's show KJ Simpson's transition dunk just because it was cool. I actually thought originally in the moment, I think I was looking down on my phone, so I didn't see that how this play erupted. So I actually thought that KJ had stolen this ball. I was like, wow, what a night for him. Still a cool dunk. But that was just like, again, Jaylen Brown not knowing what the hell he wants to do. And like it was at this point it was getting comical, and this is when they brought it to a 10-point game before the end of the third quarter, which was really cool.
Love him repping the jersey.
Dude, look at the crowd pop. You can hear the crowd pop without hearing the crowd pop in that clip.
You can also get a good look at how many green shirts and Celtics fans are often at Celtics games in Denver, which is a thing that happens. But yeah, it was a great moment for him. I'm super happy for him.
Yeah. You had some clips to bring up with respect to the defense on Jaylen Brown, but before that, Jay Hopper says, "Wish we had Derek White. What would we would have that Colorado connection." Completely agree. I tweeted out that I hate Derek White during this game because he's just so good.
He just needs to be a Nugget.
He should obviously be a Nugget, but he just, goes on the growing list of players that should have been Nuggets earlier in their careers.
Yeah, so I did want to touch on KJ Simpson really quick because Ryan Blackburn fan asked about his screen navigation. I did go back to all the clips. I watched every single Celtic offensive possession to try and pull some KJ Simpson stuff, and I don't know if the clips just started too late because he did have some good defensive moments where he was staying on guys on ball and forcing the ball away to someone else for a different action and doing some stuff on defense, but I couldn't quite find them in the clips. But did you remember seeing good little clips from KJ on defense? Because he was a little more solid than I thought. He kept Jaylen Brown in front of him on a play, I think, and he passed away. He had a good one-on-one kind of thing with Peyton Pritchard at one point as well, and just was fast on his feet and being able to square up on people, and I was really impressed with that for sure.
Yeah, I thought that he looked better than I thought. I was kind of surprised in real time because he looks, you're watching the game and you're like, he looks like clearly the smallest player on the floor by far. So I thought they could have done a better job picking on him, but maybe I think that Boston was just kind of exhausted. I was kind of waiting for the point, especially in that third quarter when Denver was making their run. I'm like, all right, guys, don't get too comfortable. I think Mazzulla is probably going to push that button soon. And I just think they were too committed to what they were doing and not necessarily matchup hunting. But he did have some solid possessions when Jaylen Brown got cross matched onto him and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. The screen navigation, people noticed some possessions. I want to see a bigger sample size of that. It didn't really stand out to me in real time, but I did see people mentioning it.
There were times definitely when he got a little relaxed on a defensive possession and not fully running through every play and closing out a little bit late. And I don't think we got punished on that particular play that I saw, but otherwise, I was pretty impressed. I mean, yes, it's super small sample size. It is early, but we had talked about the buyout market and it not looking great and not knowing who we want and maybe trying to take a chance on a two-way guy or just a guy in the G League. And it's super early. It would be kind of crazy to think we would convert KJ and we're converting Spencer and KJ Simpson to these two full roster spots for the playoffs. That'd be kind of funny to think about, but you never know. They want a guy that can play and be on the floor, and he seemed like he could stay. He seems like a guy that belongs on the floor, and Adelman said that's a pro player right there in the comments, and of course he is, and he wasn't though. He was sitting on the couch after being waived by the Hornets, I think, and here he is in Denver, got the CU connection. So we'll see what he can do, and he's kind of an archetype that we wanted, quick, smaller guard, but I didn't personally want that necessarily, but it's definitely something that we kind of could use. So we'll see how he develops. But yeah, let's go to some defense because some people are saying this is the best defense we've played in a while.
I mean, unquestionably.
Okay.
I don't. Yeah, I think it's very obviously the best defense that they've played, at least in a while, if not of the season, honestly.
Yeah.
It's definitely the fewest points that we've held a team to, but I just thought they looked really physical. And finally, like I said, just like the opposing team was not having a good time that night. Like they were, yeah.
Are you crediting the Nuggets defense more than the Celtics playing bad, or is it a mix?
It was a mix for sure. Because like at some point, it's like they're missing literally every bunny. Like they went a stretch in the fourth quarter where they didn't score for like 6 minutes. The Celtics, almost like some of it was like comical. It helps that like they don't like they're good shooters. We weren't letting their good shooters shoot. Especially the second half of that game. But I also thought we got like the basketball gods rewarded us for good defense. Like it was good defense to me.
Yeah. And holding them to 84 points is crazy. Not expecting that. Yeah, I just wanted to show a little bit because again, we talked about the Jokic drop earlier and had another one here. I mean, we know Jokic likes to be up at the level. That's usually what we do. Drops usually not the greatest idea because Jokic, you don't want him defending in space. You'd rather stop the drive right up at the beginning instead of a guy coming full speed at him. But it did cause Jaylen Brown to take mid-range jumpers, which is definitely what we would rather have. And you see Zeke Nnaji there getting a rebound. And we saw the other clip of Jokic in drop where it resulted in a Derek White 3 earlier. But, you know, that was interesting. And I love seeing, I don't think Jokic did much to force him in that shot. We talk about how he kind of like can bait people trying to get into tough floaters by like using his feet, shifting back and forth. I think Jaylen Brown was settling a little bit, but it definitely worked well. But then for you people who want some Zeke recovery, he did have a nice block on this play where Jaylen's trying to get a layup. Zeke comes from the other side and gets the block. And when I saw this clip, I was like, oh, Jokic was on the floor at the same time too. We know they usually don't play a lot together. So
yeah, this was like that end of second, like I said, the end of the second quarter stretch where they're like, rotation's kind of weird because Jamal went out, so we're just gonna stick Zeke in there. And I was like, okay, this was actually solid. Stint for him. Good on defense. Like the offense was like kind of gross for everybody most of the night. So I don't really put that on Zeke.
And it's just like we've been talking about needing athletic guys, needing big guys. We've been not playing him. We just saw him there. Is he going to play him more on defense? I don't know.
Yeah.
Let's look. So CB, you know, he needs to get better at not letting guys just drive right around him because he's supposed to be our perimeter defender. This was a play that was definitely better.
Yeah, he kept him in front. Even on that that earlier clip that you showed with Jaylen taking the midi over Christian on the other side of the floor was like, well, he wasn't bothered by the wingspan, but Christian, generally speaking, does a good job of keeping guys in front of him. It's just a matter of like, are they going to make the shot or not? Because he can, like, it's open. Like, he's not really going to bother guys with the, like I said, the wingspan thing. So, like, credit to that, because oftentimes, most of the time this season, like, guys are just getting all the way to the rim and not necessarily on Christian, like on other guys on the team. So you kind of take this where you can get it. But that I think was like, okay, it was good defense. You know, it just wasn't.
Yeah. He hit the shot and does the push off, with which they're not going to call, of course, because they never do. But I just want to see more of that from CB consistently, because there were other clips in this game where the guys just go right around him. So more of that for sure. And then Spencer Jones is going to be a guy who can hustle and make plays on defense for us as well. And I just liked his ability to kind of stay, even though Jaylen technically gets him on his hip, kind of beat him to that spot and then force him into another midi. He makes it, but like that's exactly what you want to see.
That was good recovery from Spencer too. Like I would call that a contested midi.
Yeah, contested midi. You can't really ask for.
And like you know, we clown, at least I do, on Jaylen Brown a lot. I clown on Jaylen Brown a lot, I should say. But he's still a good player. He can still make some of these shots, and it's just like you live with it. As long as he's not like, you don't want a game where like you don't want Jaylen Brown carving you up. That would be bad for your defense in terms of like diming guys up, kicking out and letting Boston take I mean, they're still going to take a lot of threes, but just don't let them be high quality.
Yeah. Speaking of high quality threes, the last one, Spencer. What is this guy's name? It's a starts
Who?
with an S. This guy. Oh, sorry. In the corner, sharp, just guy who shoots threes on the Celtics. I forget.
Sam Hauser.
Anyway, no, it's another one. Anyway, Shireman. Yeah. So Spencer's gonna, he's basically playing 2 on the weak side. It's a skip pass. Gonna have to recover there. Instead, he kind of goes to the side, almost like he could just shoot the 3, but instead he gets in between the pass to Jaylen Brown. But he's close enough to where if he were to take a 3, he could block it. But he kind of forces him into this floater that he misses on the baseline. Then we get the rebound, or there was a foul called or something. But I liked that heads up from him to position himself in between the pass, but then be there to block the shot and then force it into a more difficult floater. So Spencer Jones, another dude who can hustle and make plays. Gotta love it.
Yeah.
So yeah,
good defensive overall, effort. Yeah, great defensive game, great win. I don't care if Boston was on a 3rd and 4. We've lost in those spots before for some reason. So again, I will take the wins where I can get them. I think, let me double check the standings as of today. We're actually 4th. We're behind Houston as of this moment. Nobody else is tied in the loss column with us. So, now you're fighting for position within the conference. Man, the Spurs are on a 10-game win streak again. Probably fighting for 3rd at this point. Like, I don't see San Antonio dropping off to the degree necessary, and I don't see Denver like rocketing back up to where they were early in the season, especially with the continuing injury situation. But I wanted to give my overall assessment on Denver's prospects for the season in terms of like championship, right? I would not be surprised by any outcome at this point. They could crash and burn in the first round because the defense and the injuries just catch up completely with them, and it's just overwhelming with whatever random team they match up with. But they could also make a run all the way to the finals and or win the whole thing. What I will say is that the version of the team that makes a deep run will be almost completely divorced from the team, or when I say the team, any version of the team, because we've gotten so many that we've seen for most of the season. Largely due to injuries, because we've seen so many literally versions of like lineups and like guys that are available this season. But also because of the lack of chemistry, both in terms of the defense on a consistent basis. Like last night's game was great, and I would love to see them continue to build off of that, especially because like I think for the most part I agree with the people that said that they've been playing better defense since All-Star break, even if it hasn't been consistent. It's just they were starting from such a low baseline pre-All-Star, right? Now, can it happen anyway? Like, I don't see why not. Like, despite the defense and chemistry issues, because last year they had immense defense and chemistry issues, and they were still able to take the Thunder to 7 in the second round. I do think that they got some luck there in terms of like opponent shooting luck, especially. And I think offensively is actually more of a question now in terms of how they match up against some of the best teams in the West and who they would actually play in like a first or second round setting. But that's the thing is like, I still don't have this team nailed down to the point where, again, I would not be surprised by any outcome this season.
Yeah, it's yeah, it was like after the Warriors game, people were really down. It was like, did the Nuggets just die?
And rightfully, because I think a lot of people point to like similar to Boston last night, like that game was a 3-4 and it was middle of the day. So it was like a 3 in 3.5 days almost, or 3.75, whatever. Because it was it was the first matinee game of the day. Like it was at least the first one I watched. I don't watch games before noon when they happen because it's usually East Coast and I don't care, but also whatever. Which was true. And if Denver had performed more consistently earlier in the season, that game would not have been a referendum on them and how they were playing and their discipline defensively. It's just like, yeah, it goes along with this inconsistent trend with this team. So of course it's going to reflect poorly and people are going to freak out because they're like, we are searching, like begging this team to give us a reason to believe in them. And then that game happens, especially like right after the Portland game. Was kind of funny. But then the Boston game happens and it's like, okay, great. Can we build off of this? I don't know. I don't think anybody really feels comfortable with how the team is playing right now on a consistent basis. And I think that's, a challenge for both the players and the coaching staff in this final stretch of the season, regardless of the continuing injuries, because regardless of where they're going to fall in the standings, they need to find some level of consistency in order to not just like stay afloat in the West, but also to show like what it looks like when they are playing to a championship caliber level. I wouldn't say they were doing that earlier in the season because they were getting crazy opponent shooting luck on defense, and that was great, but there was still a lot of chemistry thing to work out on both ends of the floor. At this point in the season, and obviously like the injuries and everything derailed the entire middle portion of the season, right? So usually I'd be saying this around like December, January, but it's like, okay, now is the time to show like what it looks like when you guys are clicking on actually all cylinders. That's what happens when you can't speak, guys. And maybe like they don't care to show us that, but like I care. Like I make content. I need them to give me something to hold on to, right?
Yeah, and we got that big blowout in the Blazers game. We're like, okay, looking a little more dominant there, and then you get the horrible Warriors game. But here we are, another game, beat the Celtics. So it's not as bad as maybe it seemed coming out of the Warriors game. I'm happy that the Celtics game does make me feel a lot better. It calms some of my concerns, but clearly not all concerns are gone. And Ryan Blackburn fan brought up AG's health. And then I was thinking the same thing. I thought after the Warriors game, should I really have just expected the Nuggets to lose every game without AG? Because why not? He does so much stuff for us. Maybe I shouldn't be that surprised when we lose. And if he comes back, then we have a great chance. If we don't, we're kind of screwed. And
I think you should expect
it could be as simple as that.
We were without AG for like December and whatever too, and they were still winning at like a decent clip. There were still some like ugly losses in there, but it's like you need to expect your team to not be reliant on their third best player to win games against even decent teams if you're a team that has title aspirations.
Yeah, it just
right. Like you
so
can't fall to 29th in
out.
defense just because AG is not on the floor. Maybe,
even
if you have roster issues and like all that stuff, because they're the Phoenix Suns. Are like let me refresh this right now. They're a top, because like it's their defense has been carrying them this season. That's the funny thing. The Phoenix Suns are, I'm pretty sure, top 15. They're 9th in defense. What forwards do they have? Like, where's that coming from? It's just like this team needs to get it together, and we know that they can play better because they've shown it, right? And I'm not even saying you have to play this physical all the time against this Boston defense, but the clutch time execution on that end of the floor, especially, the offense definitely has its issues too in the clutch, but like the defensive clutch time execution was bad even when AG was playing. That's something that they can and should be expected to clean up. I'm not saying that it will happen or that I expect it to, but I think it's fair to have that standard and like say like that's the expectation that I'm setting for this team if they're going to do anything serious. For example, maybe not screwing around for 3/4 of a game. Maybe only do it for 1.5 quarters of every game and then lock in kind of thing, right? I think that there are levels to like, yeah, okay, maybe this team can't do this all the time, but they haven't really shown this gear before, like, spurts of this most recent stretch and really last night's game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the clutch stuff, Matt Moore, I read his article on it. It was really interesting in terms of what it means for title chances and all that. And the good news is that if your clutch or your regular season net rating is better than your clutch net rating, which obviously the Nuggets is because their clutch rating is terrible, usually the team that still has a better net rating gets through a series, even against a team that has a better net rating. So like there's an idea that's like, oh, the clutch means that we're not performing in these high pressure situations. In a series, we're also not going to perform in a high pressure situation, but it's not really what it shows. And the clutch can be a little weird and fluky, but that doesn't mean that the effort that the Nuggets are giving in the clutch isn't terrible and we just like lose our heads and any ability to execute, and definitely needs to be cleaned up. But It's not all like gloom and doom just because we mess up.
Also, stop letting games that shouldn't go to the clutch go to the clutch, because you should not be a team that has played like the most clutch games in the league. That's unacceptable. That's like what bad teams do. Play too many close games.
Do you want to do a prediction of the Thunder game?
No, I don't.
Don't
if
make us
SGA is going to play like they're a different team, like they're good again. I was going to say like they should win the game if they're serious, if SGA wasn't playing. I know there's some other guys out and questionable or whatever. It'll be competitive for at least a half, and then we'll see. Like I don't know. I'm curious. I do not deign to make predictions about this team anymore until we get to playoff series, and it's like, oh, I'm not taking the Clippers in a 7-game series against the Nuggets, for example, regardless of their coach and GM getting fired 3 games before the end of the season. Wait, what? Could you bring up that Vyacheslav comment again?
Nuggets are not a regular season team. We're better in the playoffs.
I mean, I guess
it's a little bit true. And
they were barely above 500. Were they even above 500 in the playoffs last year? I guess they were 500 in the playoffs last year because they won 1 7-game series and lost 1 7-game series. Mm-hmm. And we're above 500 in the regular season. How do you assess being better in the playoffs than the regular season, if not record?
Because you just win more, yeah.
They certainly outperformed the expectation in the playoffs, I would say.
And you can just kind of see the effort, but that's just how all the playoffs often look like a different game than NBA regular season because everyone's like stepping it up. But I feel like we're probably gonna lose tomorrow. I can't lie. Just gonna be tough without our size and athleticism, but you never know. I also thought we were gonna lose the Celtics game and we won, so don't always listen to me in my predictions. Alrighty.
If you made it this far, we appreciate you guys. If you like your content, please remember to hit the like button, the subscribe button, as well as the notification bell. Follow us on socials. And always remember that winning is fun and losing sucks.
Especially losing in the Thunder. Save us, Nuggets.